Hey there, and welcome back to the Martino Minute, where we pull back the curtain on how things actually work so you can make better decisions for your business. I'm Selena Martino here again with Steve Martino. And in the last episode, we talked about the traditional workers' comp setup, where you pay your premium, everything's handled for you, but you don't have much control over the outcome. Today, we're taking the next step because eventually a lot of business owners start asking, what if I don't want to just react to my costs anymore? What if I want a little more control? And it really comes down to this. What if you could lower your costs, but take on some of the risk? So, Steve, can you walk us through what actually changes here?
I'm trying to put it in layman's terms because I think a lot of times brokers, they talk so much in insurance that they lose the owner of a business's attention because it's like, what are you talking about? So what happens is, obviously, in the first episode, we said guaranteed cost. That just means you pay a premium to the carrier for your workers' comp. That premium is the same for 12 months, depending on whether your payroll goes up and down. And the carrier covers any risk associated with a work-related injury. And you're at the mercy of all of the people that are in that guaranteed cost program, like the pool that you're in. And the rates can go up and down based on the experience of that pool. So what happens is, a guy will come out of here and he'll go, hey, I haven't had any losses in 5 years. Why am I still paying $20,000 or $30,000 a year premium? Because you're paying for all the other guys. So the next step is, okay, well, what if I assume some of the risk? So let me give you an example. If you have car insurance and you have no deductible, guaranteed cost, meaning any accident is paid for 100%, your premium would be high. And then the car insurance carrier comes to you and says, how about a $5,000 deductible? Your car gets totaled, you have to pay the first $5,000 and then they pay the rest. Well, they're willing to charge you less premium because you're taking on some of the risk. And you might say, well, yeah, but $5,000 for a $50,000 car that's totaled, that's not much of a risk. Well, the issue is that the carrier knows that most people aren't going to total their car. Most people are going to have small fender benders, yada, yada. And if that $5,000 deductible covers all that small stuff, then the carrier isn't have to pay that, and they don't have to administrate that. And they only have to pay for the one guy out of 500 that totals his car. And they have enough premium to cover that spread across all the rest of the people that are buying car insurance. And so that's, work comp's the same way. There are two types of risk, one step above guaranteed cost. There's small deductible and large deductible. Small deductible might be a client that says, I have 100,000 in premium and I'll pay the first 5 or 10 or 25,000 in losses. And the carrier is able to reduce the rate they charge that person because of that deductible. That's a small deductible. Actually, it's probably more like $5,000 to $25,000 deductible. And that's somebody that's maybe paying 100,000 in premium and never had any losses. And your premium will be less. But you have to make sure you understand that if you're somebody that has, 5 losses that are 2,500 or 5,000, you're going to have to pay all that out of your pocket. If you're somebody that only has a loss once in a while, then maybe that small deductible isn't going to be that painful. It's just a matter of measuring what is the carrier charging you in lieu of you taking whatever deductible you take. Large deductible would be larger clients. We have programs available for clients that are paying, say, $500,000 to $1 million in premium. You could take a $50,000 or $100,000 per occurrence deductible. The carrier is going to ask you to put up collateral to make sure you're able to pay that deductible, kind of a letter of credit or something, just in case you don't have enough money to pay. They take it out of that, and then your premium is reduced. And so think it in terms of just like anything else, like car insurance or homeowners insurance or anything. If you take some portion of the risk and you're willing to pay that, your premium is going to be less. But be very, very careful so that you really do a really good analysis of the last 5 years of losses to see if I had a $5,000 deductible over 5 years, my premium would have been X. how many losses did I have that would have been in that $5,000 range, and lay that against how much I save in premium compared to how much risk I take. And remember, work comp is an odd thing. It's not like car insurance. You could have no claims this year and have a $5,000 deductible. Go, oh, I did really good. I saved 20% on my premium. 5 years from now, there may be a claim that wasn't reported this year that pops up 5 years from now, especially soft tissue, back injuries, that kind of thing. So you assume some risk for a reduction in premium, but be very, very careful.
It sounds like with this structure, you are actually stepping into the equation a little bit, like you've got some skin in the game, and it's no longer fully hands off.
It's not easy to put a small deductible program together. There's a lot of carriers that won't even offer it. So there's only a certain niche that you can get it. But when clients do that, they have a tendency, since they have risk in the game, to spend a little more money on their safety program, to educate their employees better, to make sure that the guys on the roof, if you're a roofer, are tied off properly. Even though Cal OSHA requires you to do all these things, you and I know, my being a small business owner, sometimes you run your business not necessarily exactly the way Cal OSHA wants you to run it, or the best way to, make sure, because at some point in time, you may have so many regulations around safety, your employees can't even do their job. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but that can happen. And so when you take risk, you have a tendency to just pay more attention, to, like, say on Monday, a guy comes in and says, I fell down at work and hurt my knee. Well, if you're in a guaranteed cost program, you probably just turn that claim into the carrier. Don't worry about it. If you're in a deductible program, you might look at that guy and say, are you sure you hurt your knee today, Monday? Maybe you hurt it over the weekend playing softball. If you got anybody that saw you fall down, you might have a tendency to be more proactive, which helps. So yeah, you take an active portion in it.
Could you speak a little bit to the specifics of who this structure actually works well for? You talked about maybe strong safety practices, being more aware of your risk history.
Yeah, more professionally run companies that are not startups and brand new, somebody who's got a track record and their safety program seems to be working. And more importantly, well, not more importantly, but just about as important, is that they have a history that you can look back on over the last, say, 10 years and stratify the losses. It's like, how many losses? What were they? Were they slip and falls? Is it a lot of soft tissue? What is it? And if the losses indicate that you run your company fairly strict, and that you don't have catastrophic claims, and that you don't have a high frequency problem, then it might make sense to take a small or large deductible. But at the same time, you should put money away just in case.
So you're talking about strong safety practice, lower claims frequency, and they're also paying more attention to how their operation runs. It seems like there's also the need for a level of financial stability where they can actually absorb some of those more predictable costs.
Yeah. Yeah. You said it better than I did. It's a matter of the history of losses. It's a matter of how they run their company. It's a matter of, do they have good relationships with their employees? I just spent an hour with a company today that has like 150, 200 employees. And I actually walked around the facility, and you can see morale is very high. They're very structured. The outside doors are all locked, so people can't come and go without a PFOB. Their history of claims has been pretty consistent. You can almost predict the next 5 years by looking at the last 10. And then you can see whether they have a frequency problem, and they have plenty of capital. So why would they be paying $500,000 a year for work comp when their losses are consistently below $100,000 a year? Why don't they just pick a major deductible or a small deductible and save some of that money? And they have plenty of, like your mention about, they got to have financial capability. Anytime you take on a deductible, you got to have enough money to pay that deductible immediately. So if you have a $25,000 deductible and that claim pops up, you got to pay it. I mean, you can't say, well, I'll wait till next month. No, you got to pay it. That guy's he's got to go to emergency immediately, and they're going to send you the bill. So financial stability, a seasoned company that has a really good track record, where we can actually recommend that the reward far outweighs the risk of taking on a deductible program.
On the flip side, what are some of the things that businesses might take for granted about this structure? What might they get wrong about it?
Many, many times I've seen businesses go into a small or even a major deductible program looking at the last 10 years and not understand that catastrophic accidents happen. You may not have had one for 5 years, but they happen. And so you should never go into a deductible program or a risk sharing program unless you have a plan to survive a catastrophic accident where the worst case scenario happened and you have to pay out of your pocket. Give an example. I had a roofer one time that wanted a 25,000 per occurrence deductible. And I said, so do you understand that if you have multiple employees on a work site, the 25,000 per occurrence is only per employee. And so if for whatever reason you had 5 employees fall or get hurt or do something at the same time, maybe not even part of the same accident, independent accidents, that's $25,000 per employee times 5. And so you've got to make sure you plan for the worst case scenario. I mean, God help us if that happened, but I've had clients where they went, I had no idea that that would happen. I said, well, your broker didn't explain accidents happen. You have to plan for the worst. So maybe a $5,000 deductible would have been a better program for you. You wouldn't saved as much money on the premium, but that worst case scenario wouldn't have put you out of business.
So you could have a year where things are looking great, or a chunk of years, and then 1 or 2 or 5 claims hit, and now you feel it more directly. It feels like one of the things people might underestimate is that variability and the ability to prepare for it properly.
That, and also one thing I just thought of while you were saying that is a business that changes. So there are businesses that do the same thing, and they've been doing the same thing for 10 years. And that the risk doesn't change. It's like they don't all of a sudden, it'd be like an estimator that estimates for buildings. He goes out and somebody wants to remodel their house, or they want to build a new house or whatever, and he does an estimate. But all of a sudden, 5 years later, that business decides they also want to do estimates for roofs. But the guy's got to go on the roof to do it. Now that risk changed. So that deductible that worked for the last 5 or 10 years for that guy was okay because he never went above 1 story. But now he's got people going above 1 story. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Even though you're not a roofer, you still could fall off that roof. And so we better take a look at your deductible and make sure, we either go back to a standard guaranteed cost or adjust it. So the danger for a business in a deductible program is to not get through their head that it's not about just saving premium. It's about being able to pay claims. And if your business is one that changes, we have one business that started out as when a house floods, they go in and repair the carpets and dry out the walls. Restoration company. Your house hot water heater breaks and it floods the house. And they go in and pull up all the carpets and they put the dryers in and they do all that. And we wrote them, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, one way. And we had a good track record of the losses. So we were able to put them in a pretty good program that they shared some of the risk. And now they go in and replace the wallboard. They replace structures. They replace dry rot. They started looking at mold, because a house floods, you don't get it right away. You got mold, so they're remediating mold. And they run into some of the houses that are old that have asbestos in the ceiling, and they've got asbestos. It's like, the risk changed completely. And so I said, hey, you got to get out of this risk sharing program because, the risk changed. Even though you're the same company, you grew into a different risk profile. So we need to put you in a different type of program to make sure that you don't end up with having shared the risk of something you didn't know how bad the risk was.
I feel like a common thread that has been flowing through many of the conversations you and I have is highlighting the importance of a broker. I think a lot of people want to just set it and forget it, or they don't care about the relationship that they have with their broker. And it sounds like, especially as you start getting into more of these complicated structures that aren't a perfect fit for everybody, the position of a broker is really to help you understand that it's not just a pricing decision, it's a structural decision, and they can help you.
You're exactly right. And a lot of, to add to that, a lot of the brokerages, and believe me, I have respect for property casualty broker. They do a really good job. But like anything, if you've got 100 employees, there's 15% that are super outstanding employees. There's 15% that are marginal, and about 70% in the middle where they do the job fairly well. Well, if you've got a broker and you've got a business that's constantly changing, you better hope your broker's in that top 15%, because just selling insurance is not enough. You have to have somebody that is willing to take a look at your business and understand how it might change. And a lot of brokers do that. Don't get me wrong. But the younger guys that come into the business brand new that don't have experience, they have a tendency to be handed the smaller businesses and guaranteed cost programs. But when the younger guys start saying, hey, maybe I could get you a deductible, you got to be careful to make sure they understand how to really look at the risk. And again, I don't want brokers calling me and throwing darts at my picture, but yeah, you got to have the right broker.
So back to just the structure of the deductible setup, it sounds like the savings aren't guaranteed, and definitely your performance drives your outcome. So you need to be prepared to take on some of that. So how does a business know that this is something that they should even consider if it sounds like it would be a good fit?
If they have the right broker, the broker will evaluate the history and take a look at it and say, I think it's time for us to look at a risk sharing program. And it really comes down to the right broker. That you can't expect a client to understand what we in the insurance industry are supposed to understand. That's why we're paid as professional advisors. That's really what a broker is. So hopefully you have the right broker. The first question is, ask your broker, how many comp structures are there? And if they go, just one, guaranteed cost, you got the wrong broker.
Sounds as like when we're stepping into these different alternative structures for workers' comp, specifically with the deductible structure, and there really is a level of kind of stability and discipline that is necessary for you to actually benefit from this kind of structure. It's not all hands off. There's elements of what you do and your safety practices that are literally going to affect the outcome of what you end up paying.
Yeah. And it really, I might be slapping myself for saying this, but I think and I just thought of this. If you're a startup business, 5, 10, 20 employees, you should be in a guaranteed cost program. After about 5 or 10 years, if you are growing and you haven't changed, but it's the same model, and you start to become maybe 4 times bigger than what you were when you started up, then you should look at what other structure might fit you. And then as you become more mature and you're growing and now you have 100 employees, then you might look at another structure. And there's about 4 or 5 different structures depending on how long you've been in business, how you run your business, what type of business you have, and whether you should be taking any risk or looking at any of these other structures. It really has a direct correlation to at what stage is your business? Is it in an infancy? Is it mature? Is it growing rapidly? Is it in multi-states? And your broker should be looking at that. And at certain points of the business lifeline, you should be looking at other structures. But don't get me wrong, there are some very, very large businesses, specifically ones that are super high risk, like roofing or security guards that carry guns, that should never, ever take any risk. They should be in a guaranteed cost program forever. They might be able to get a discount because of their size and their aggregate buying power, but they shouldn't be taking risks because the catastrophic potential is too high. What we're talking about, small and large deductible, is the first step in assuming some risk. The next thing we're going to talk about in the next video is pretty serious assumption of risk, which is captives or group programs. But the steps have to do with the size of the business and maturity of the business. So I think we're pretty much covered the deductible program. It's pretty easy. And I can't tell you what the perfect client is for a deductible program unless I have 5 to 10 years worth of history. Then I can tell you.
Well, thanks for that, Steve. It does sound like this is a first step where things really start to shift. You're no longer just paying, you're actually participating. And it seems like for the right business, that can create a real advantage, but it also comes with a level of responsibility because now your results are tied more directly to how your business actually performs. And as Steve just mentioned in the next episode, we are going to take that one step further into captive structures where you're not just participating in the outcome, you're actually part of the system itself. So stay tuned. Steve, thanks again for your time.
You're welcome.